Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to this episode of the Highlander Podyssey. Today, we're going to have a conversation with Dr. Eric McCarthy. If you haven't taken a class with him before, he's a professor of English here at Gordon State College, where he teaches classes such as English composition, British literature, foundational author classes on both John Milton and William Shakespeare, and other such classes that fit into the humanities curriculum here. We're going to be mainly focused today on how the college experience has evolved over the past decades and how the inclusion of AI and asynchronous learning has affected and will continue to affect students and professors for better or worse. Okay, so to get started, I'd like to ask you, so I've heard Dr. Jansen speak about AI work kind of seemingly appearing one day out of nowhere and just appearing as this, like someone just one day realized that they could produce work at levels above that they were not used to and kind of cause a panic attack for him. Was this the same thing that you experienced as well?
Absolutely, yeah.
Really?
It happened very fast. I think students caught on very quickly to what was going on.
Really?
And this was probably 2023. I want to say that I was hearing about it in the fall of maybe 2022. I might have my years a little mixed up here, but I think by spring of 2023, it was like a lightning strike. I mean, it was so obvious to me what was going on. And at that time, my students were submitting much of their work online, and I noticed right away. And then I think by that first semester, it was a handful of students, but within a couple of semesters, it felt like a majority of students were using it. And many of them were using it to produce entire documents, not just portions, but like the whole thing. Yeah.
So a lot of professors here I've seen also, they offer guidance on how to use AI effectively now that won't result in some form of cheating, such as using it like a launch pad to find new ideas or areas for research. Do you think that this is a good idea overall, or is there a risk that this only kind of introduces students as an easy way to accomplish work? Kind of like the same analogy as the gateway drug mentality that the war on drugs focused on.
That's an interesting analogy. I think the cat's out of the bag, though. I don't think any student is being introduced to it. I think all of them know. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows what it is. In fact, I'm using it inadvertently sometimes. Just when I do Google searches and things, AI just sort of takes over and starts doing work for me. So I think it's a good idea for professors to give students guidance, and I do give my students guidance on here are some things you can do with AI that are within bounds, and here's where you are crossing into territory you don't want to go. So things like generating ideas or looking for definitions of things. I think there are ways that you can use AI. For example, I was doing some research just casually last night on Shakespeare, and I was trying to remember how many volumes were in Alexander Pope's second edition of the works of Shakespeare in 1728. And I couldn't remember if it was 6 volumes or 8 volumes. 2 years ago, I would have Googled that edition, and I would have had to have sort of looked and scrolled through to find that information. But I just asked AI, and it said 8 volumes with the supplementary 9th volume. And I was like, that's right. That's correct. I just knew in my mind that was right. And so I used AI to sort of help me answer a quick question, not a hard question, right. But it saved me time. And I think that's a lot of what we see going on with students.
Okay. Do you think that AI, like you said, it's the cat's out of the bag now, so you think AI in schoolwork is here permanently and it's not like a short-lived fad?
I think this is it.
It is.
This is a generational change, just like the internet was, 20-some years ago, and computers and word processing a generation before that. This is the new thing. It's going to reshape the landscape of higher education and research in my field. It's just it's the Rubicon has been crossed, and there's no going back from it.
What kind of measures are professors taking in reaction to this? I know that there's certain programs that professors can run documents through to make sure that there's nothing AI produced in there, or is there some other method that they're taking?
Nothing that's reliable, which is a problem. I can tell you what I've done in my classes, and that is I'm shifting back to in-class writing. That for my in-person classes,
Okay.
Students come in and they have to now write their major papers in person, and obviously I'm there and I'm walking around and looking at what they do. That's been one way. I think another way to do it, and I've been doing this with some of my online classes, is to break down assignments into components that students complete, rather than just saying, here, write a paper. Having students do certain kinds of tasks, certain kinds of prep work, breaking the essay down or the project down a little bit more so it has to be completed in steps. That reduces, I think, the temptation that students feel to offload some of that work when it's a little more manageable, when it's just a very specific task.
Yeah. Going back to that earlier question, when AI first showed up, was it like taken seriously by everybody, or did everybody think that it was just like, oh, look at this thing that's being used now?
I think everybody recognized immediately
Really?
that it was a thing. Yeah.
Okay.
It was
Yeah.
It felt like a nuclear explosion for me. I mean, I recognized, and I'm not really a tech person. So when this happened, I have a tendency to overreact to things. But this really felt like my hair was blowing back off my head. It was like a blast.
Okay.
And I knew that this was a big deal.
Okay. So because of this, are students cheating in greater numbers now that AI tools are readily available, or is AI just taking the mantle as the preferred form of plagiarism now?
No, I think it's increased cheating.
It's increased cheating?
Substantially.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think in part because students just don't know the boundaries. Like I said, you could be using AI without really even being aware of what you're doing, and hit pause for a second. Okay, so yeah, I think that the old sort of academic integrity policies were more clear cut, and I think AI has a lot of ambiguity around it. Particularly as students move from course to course, from the humanities to the sciences to the social sciences or whatever. Different professors have different expectations. Plagiarism, for example, or copying off of somebody's test is kind of universally
Sure. Right. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of ambiguity with AI, and I think it confuses students. And there are lots of different policies depending on the course. And I think it's also really easy to use. And I think that students tend to. They might say they're not going to use it, but then the pressure comes, and there's this what we call cognitive offloading. Like how can I get rid of some of the stress of this project?
Okay.
And then the temptation to use AI, it's just right there. It's just dangling at your fingertips.
Sure.
And it's very hard to resist that.
Yeah.
So it does. I think it does lead students, more students, to cheat than there would have been prior to AI.
Okay. Sure. Is there a concern among professors that AI will eventually progress to the point that it's indistinguishable from student-produced work?
We may almost be there now.
Really?
Yeah. There are. I'm aware of. I don't really use these tools, but I've been told, and I have anecdotal evidence supporting the idea that students now have ways of asking AI to generate content in a way that mimics the voice of, say, a college freshman.
Okay.
Right.
Wow.
Like that it can sort of eliminate the sort of the jargon of academe, that it doesn't, it's not going to sound scholarly. It will sound a little more like a novice, writing. So yeah, I think that if we're not there yet, we're very close to AI even being able to mimic what a student's natural voice sounds like, because you could say, generate text using my voice based on my social media feed,
Okay.
And it will use the student's vocabulary. And I think we're very close to already being able to do that.
Sure, yeah. In last week in Dr. Jansen's class, actually, he showed us a sample of 3 different essays, 2 of which were AI and 1 was something that he wrote himself. And only, I want to say, about a third of the class was able to distinguish which one was AI. And it was, it had some obvious things in it that weren't naturally human, but other than that, it was pretty indistinguishable.
That's an interesting point, because I think a lot of students, you when you're talking about a college professor, I've been doing this for over 30 years, and I've read tens of thousands of pages of student work, so I know it when I see it. It's very obvious to me, and I think to a lot of students it may not seem so obvious. So I think for a student, they could say, for example, this sounds like a good paper to me, and it will be, but when I see it, I recognize immediately that it's AI,
Sure.
whereas the student maybe couldn't recognize the difference. Well, how did you know that this wasn't my work? I was like, well, I'm a reader, it's obvious to me.
Right.
Whereas to a student sort of reading it themselves, I might say, well, this sounds good, but does it sound like you? Does it sound like a college student? And most professors, most of my colleagues, they know. They have that sort of intuitive sense. Maybe younger professors, not so much, but professors who have experience.
Okay. Do you get more cheating in online classes, more AI cheating, I mean, since people don't have to look you in the eye and say, this is mine?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I am not really into teaching online classes anymore because of this. A good example is discussion posts. Discussion posts, I think, I don't know what students think of discussion posts, to be honest.
Right.
Do they think, oh, it's this kind of onerous thing that I have to do? And if that's their thought, then there's already a huge temptation to try to...
Mostly, yes, from what I understand, that is how it's seen. Yeah.
Right. So there's already a temptation to avoid having to do the discussion posts, and AI's right there. So you just put in the discussion prompt. And what's really funny is I think some of the students write their responses using AI. So what you have are two machines talking to each other.
Sure.
And that's where I really notice the difference, is in that kind of online asynchronous work, like discussion posts, where I see a lot of cheating that really discourages me, because I want to be able to respond to what the students are saying and what they're thinking. And probably 75% of the time, I'm not confident that I'm actually doing that. Instead, I'm talking to two machines that are talking to each other.
Yeah, that is sad. And that reminds me, sometimes, I know you said it's the temptation of it being right there. Sometimes I live off campus. Sometimes I'll have to come to campus to do work, because I know if I'm at home, I'm going to be tempted to just watch TV or do whatever.
Sure.
But if I'm here, I'll do work. So I guess it's kind of the same thing of having AI right there to do discussion posts. So this might seem kind of far-fetched, but at the rate AI is evolving and being used in workplaces, is there any concern that one day educators might be replaced wholly or partially by AI?
Oh, I think about this all the time.
Really?
Yeah. They're already... I have heard, again, this is all anecdotal, I don't have any documentation of this, but there are professors who have used AI to assess work. I think, well, once you go there, well, then what do you need the professor for?
Sure, yeah.
Right. There is, and I think especially in traditional academic disciplines like the humanities, which are not vocational specific. We don't have clinical. We don't have. We're not training for a career here. There is a tendency, I think, to try to automate some of that.
Sure.
Some of that curriculum. I think that's a big temptation from the college management perspective. We're trying to save money. We're trying to utilize resources. Is there a way to make our labor more efficient? And I think that temptation's there, and I think we are going to start seeing that. Replacing professors or reducing the number of faculty. I can even imagine a future where all the courses are run by one faculty member who just oversees the content of all of the courses, but they basically run themselves.
The little AI drones taking care of all the hard work.
The AI drones taking care of everything, and all you have is a content controller who's accredited, who has a doctorate or whatever, but is responsible for basically overseeing all these course modules. But it all basically runs automatically, which is a nightmare for someone like me.
Sure. Do you believe, that kind of goes to the last question also, what you were saying, do you believe there's any correlation between lack of interest in the humanities as well as there's like a steadily declining rate of reading and comprehension abilities in students with the increased availability of AI tools and asynchronous learning?
Certainly. Yeah. I think there's, If you just take a literature class, for example,
Mm-hmm.
well, I'll use my English comp class where students read literary works. They read As I Lay Dying by William Faulkner. It's a complicated novel. It's a difficult novel. And I get the feeling that students are not really reading it just based on the classwork that we're doing,
Right.
the things that they do and the things they don't do. I get the sense that they're doing things like summarize, these 3 chapters for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's, again, it's shortcutting. It's the cognitive offloading. They think, well, I've got these other projects I got to get done. Reading always goes to the bottom of the list because it's so time consuming to read, especially something that's challenging and difficult, like a Shakespeare play or Faulkner's novels. And so there's a tendency to say, well, I gotta find time somewhere. So I'm going to ask the machine to tell me what this is about or what's important. And I think that sort of cheapens what we do in the humanities. It's not, reading is the core of what we do. At least in English, it is. Not all humanities disciplines, but most of them involve substantial reading and thinking. And those are time-consuming activities. And I think that in the culture, the academic culture, and in our broader culture, there's an emphasis on speed and efficiency. And so if our culture doesn't value reading and thought and reflection, then of course students aren't going to value those things and they're going to want a shortcut around them.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that because recently I heard Dr. Whitelock say in a class that the reason that those statistics exist about declining rate of reading and comprehension is because that this country, better than any other country in the world, teaches young kids to hate reading and writing. And by the time they get into like middle or high school, it's a chore. It's not something that they can enjoy anymore.
That's right. Yeah, I think young children do enjoy to read and write. And I don't know. I'm not an expert in early grades education or child psychology by any stretch. I just want to be very clear about that. But the joy of reading and writing seems to have been lost on younger people. And I think that you're right. I think Dr. Whitelock is correct. That by the time students reach those critical years, those early adolescent years, that joy that they experienced as a child learning to read or write is gone. Where did it go? E.D. Hirsch, a philosopher, an educator, has written about this, and he looks at K through 12 education specifically and what's going on there, and also the way we've been teaching students to read over the last 25 or 30 years. The way students are learning to read has been exposed as problematic.
Really, in what way?
Well, there are different kinds of reading. Students who were taught to read using phonics, for example.
Oh, hooked on phonics. I remember that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, sounding out words and knowing what the words are versus what's called, I think one term for it is sight reading, where you sort of skim, and if you don't know a word, you try to fill it in with context clues, and you don't actually try to sound out the word. Okay. And so students start. But we don't want the podcast to go there. But there's been a lot of work on how students have been taught to read for the last 35 years. And,
that's interesting.
It's been exposed as being problematic because we went away from phonics.
Okay.
We went away from phonics to sort of context clue-oriented reading. And I hear it in students when they read aloud in class. They'll skip words. They will see a word and they think they know what it is because of the words that came before it, and they read it, but it's not even close to the right word. And so it's affecting their comprehension, particularly when the texts are more challenging.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, just from my own personal experience here at Gordon, I've noticed that during a lot of semesters now, online classes seem to almost outweigh in-person classes. When did you begin to notice the shift from the majority of classes being offered in person to such a heavy presence of online courses?
COVID-19.
Was that it? COVID-19?
Yeah, it was the pandemic. Yeah, I wasn't even trained to teach online courses at that time, and I didn't, and I studiously avoided it. I mean, people would tell me, you should get trained to teach online. I said, I don't want to teach online. The pandemic hit, and then suddenly there was a mandate. You will teach online. Everybody gets trained to teach online. And so for, I don't know, a year, 2 semesters, we were teaching mostly online or various kinds of hybrid classes. And everyone kind of knew then that's it.
Right.
We're never going to go back. Students even didn't want online at that time. If you can imagine that. Even
Really?
the students weren't really interested in online classes. Since that time, almost every student on this campus is taking at least one online class right now.
Sure.
And that is startling how quickly that happened, going from like 10% of our course. I don't know the exact number, but let's just say 10% of our courses being online versus now, I don't know what the percentages are, but it's substantially more.
Right. Yeah, I was a student here at Gordon like 12 years ago, actually, and I don't remember taking any courses online or even seeing them offered. And this semester, I'm taking 5 classes, and 4 of them are online.
Right.
Yeah.
Right,
so, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, as a professor, these asynchronous classes, do they create a higher workload because of like the inclusion of discussion posts you have to look over, watching out for AI, creating documents, instructions, audio lessons, all that good stuff?
Yeah, I think a misperception that a lot of people have, even people I work with, is that teaching online is easy. And it's not.
Really?
It is really hard to do, particularly if it's a new course you've never taught before. You have to create content. You have to there is a lot. I'll just say there's a lot of work that goes into it. And the idea that it's less work because you don't have to go into class and teach for 75 minutes twice a week, that's a mistake. I think that there's a lot of work to do, and D2L, our learning platform, is so complicated and so fiddly. Setting things like dates for things to open and unlock, and if you make one little mistake, like if you forget to open something at the time you said you would, suddenly that has a ripple effect, and everything else has to change because of that one little slip. So it does add to workload, in my view. Yeah,
I know from a student's perspective, I don't want to speak for every student, but certainly those I've talked to, it's a lot of work for the students as well, just what feels like a lot of busy work, especially like you said with the discussion posts where it says, all right, 4 more discussion posts this week, let me go ahead and knock these out, it just becomes kind of like a chore.
Yeah, but, and I think going to class, being in the classroom, it might feel like a chore to go to the classroom, but I think that kind of live discussion where you're talking to a human being and people are listening to you and having a conversation like we're having, right? You can't do this in a discussion post.
Right.
So there's no physical interaction. There's no sort of cueing off of each other. Those discussion posts can be pretty onerous. I agree.
Yeah. What advantages do you think that asynchronous learning offers to education, though, other than just having a flexible schedule and I'm sure less time travel for people that live off campus?
Well, those are the big ones. I don't know that if I can really speak to a student's perspective beyond what you just stated. The convenience aspect, I guess I would say. What it offers me is kind of it's something that cuts both ways. I mean, on the one hand, what it sort of forces me to do is think a lot more about the content that I'm delivering to my students, because I can't just read Shakespeare and go in and riff on Hamlet for 75 minutes, and kind of ask a few questions, and then students answer my questions, and then the discussion kind of evolves organically out of that. Instead, I have to give, a 75-minute lecture on Hamlet with some kind of visual component and text components. And it takes a lot of work to do that. I mean, I'm probably a more extreme example of this, but like in my Shakespeare class, those presentations on those plays, I probably spent from research to recording to editing to posting, probably I would guess between 20 and 30 hours for every single one of them.
Wow.
And so doing all of that in one semester while I'm teaching 4 other classes. Right.
That's an incredible commitment.
An incredible commitment and absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
But the flip side is I'm pretty pleased with that, like what I wind up creating, although I would like to do it better in lots of ways, but what I wind up creating within those constraints is really satisfying, and I feel good about it. In some ways, I feel like I know Hamlet better because I was forced to kind of organize my thoughts, and rather than having that interaction with students, just trying to be very clear about, well, what's important? What do people really need to know about this? And what do I think about it?
Sure.
And that's a rewarding side to it for me.
Sure. So I'm sure your experience as a college student was somewhat different from the average student experience today due to the advances in technology and increasing distant learning. Do you find it difficult in any way to connect with students who come from a different generation that was raised under such different circumstances?
Not really. I use the same technology they do.
Sure.
I mean, I'll say that when I started college, I was using a typewriter.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my freshman and sophomore year, I didn't even have a computer. I was writing my papers on an IBM electric typewriter, which I still have, by the way, and I love it. I don't use it, but it's sitting there, and I look at it and and reminisce about it. But no, I don't. Personally, I don't feel like I can't relate to students because of the technology, because it's in my life too.
So both AI and asynchronous learning represent a form of progress in education, both in negative and positive ways. In your doctoral dissertation, you wrote, "In the public address fragments, Blake remarks glumly that the painters of England are unemployed in public works. This dearth of opportunity sooner or later would compel most artists in the direction of private enterprise." So education, especially education focusing on arts and the humanities, is kind of receiving a similar treatment today. As an English professor, have you or your colleagues discussed what's coming next and how this field will continue to evolve?
Well, we talk about it, but it's a hard conversation. What's going to happen to the humanities over the next 15 or 20 years?
Right.
If the public, if the students, if their families don't care about a humanities-based education, then eventually the people who set the curriculum for the university system will say, well, why are we giving the public something that they don't want, or even worse, something that we think they don't need? Yeah. So if for example, this is really extreme, but let's just say, for example, that people decide, writing is just not a skill that we need in the workplace anymore. Well, why are we asking students to spend so much time writing and reading literature in their freshman classes, particularly when students tend to struggle in those classes? So why do we make them do it if it's not practical, if it doesn't serve a particular end? Particularly as we see higher education become increasingly vocationalized. It's all about finding the career. What's this preparing you for outside of college?
Sure.
Yeah. So there is a lot of fear and probably a little paranoia.
Yeah.
But some of it's based in real concrete circumstances. It does seem to be that the humanities is getting squeezed and pushed out. And we do see it in declining interest among students.
Sure. To build off that last question, with the English program being done away here at Gordon and humanities-focused programs receiving the same treatment elsewhere across the United States, do you think the next generation, however people classify generations, is prepared to carry forward the torch, so to speak, and continue studying and educating others on art and literature?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer for that one. What I can speak to is
a concern I have that there will always be people who will carry that torch. My concern is that it will become increasingly privatized or elite. That for public institutions like Gordon State College, for example, it won't matter. That instead it's going to become a kind of class marker, which is what it used to be. The social elites in the world, they were the ones that received that kind of humanities education. It became a kind of marker of class status and prestige. That you went to an institution where you read Shakespeare, and that became kind of a cultural symbol or marker of status and class. And I would really hate for the humanities to return to that. But my fear is that that's what could end up happening, is that if you want to study art and literature, you go to expensive private institutions or elite institutions.
Yeah.
And that's the only place you're going to get it.
So some way down the road, there'll be a whole generation of people, whole class of people who can't read or write or can barely do so because of that.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Or at the very least, just don't really have any exposure to art and literature.
Yeah.
Or humanistic thought
Right.
in general, philosophy, religious studies, all of that.
Have you had any experiences in recent memory that have like reaffirmed your passion for teaching and exploring literature?
Oh, this is my life, so I feel like every day.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, this is not a job for me. You know, this is it's a hard career at times, and sometimes I do scratch my head and wonder what I'm doing. But at the end of the day, this is my passion. This is what I think about. I don't like clock out and then not think about art and literature anymore. You know, it's what I do on the weekends. It's what I do on my vacations. I was reading Shakespeare on my honeymoon. I mean, I love this material, and I'm always discovering and learning things that reignite that passion in me. And I don't think you could do this job, quite frankly, without having that passion driving you along. So it is both my vocation and my hobby, I guess you could say.
Sure. If you could go back in time and speak to yourself at the beginning of your career, is there anything you would say about what to expect in the future, or maybe offer some motivational words to help yourself get through tough times?
Wow.
Boy, stepping into the time machine on that one.
I guess I would tell myself to be a little more practical
and less idealistic.
And that's still something I struggle with, quite frankly. I think my idealism can in some ways cloud my my rational instincts.
Okay.
You know, be practical. Try not to let your idealism blind you to things.
Sure.
And because
if you cling to that, it can be very frustrating and heartbreaking.
Right.
Because the world changes and life goes on, and you can't stop. Just like AI, you can't stop this from happening. It's going to happen. So you have to respond. And all of my moaning and groaning about it, and the days of writing, and I have found ways, like I said, of trying to get students to focus on writing in class. But the bottom line is I have to be ready to adapt and evolve. And I think in my early years, I was idealistic and I thought this is the way it should be and the way it has to be. And the world just doesn't work that way as much as we would like it to. The world just doesn't revolve around your values and your ideals. And you have to be ready to move when the world moves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of ideals and things kind of going off the rails a little bit, this last question is more of a fun question, less focused on academia, but it's something I thought about the other day. I don't know why. It's just something that went through my mind. So you've taught classes that focus on both the works of John Milton and William Shakespeare. Are you familiar with the original Mad Max trilogy of movies?
It's been a while. Yeah, it's been a while.
Okay.
Which movie are you thinking about?
Thunderdome, with
Thunderdome.
the one with Tina Fey and the giant cage where the two men have to go.
Master Blaster runs Bartertown.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
I remember that. Yeah.
So, okay, you got John Milton, you got William Shakespeare. They're in Thunderdome. Two men enter, one man leaves. Who's walking out of there alive?
Wow. I think that understanding who these two men were, you know, Shakespeare was a middle class sort of suburban man. I mean, he worked in London, but had a home and estate in Stratford and retired there eventually, and was unlike Christopher Marlowe, who was sort of a mysterious, you know, man who wound up murdered in Deptford. Shakespeare lived a very kind of comfortable, middle class, easy life with an estate and a family, a couple of daughters. John Milton grew up, or didn't grow up, but he was involved with the English Civil War and was employed in the administration of Oliver Cromwell, and you know, he saw a king's head cut off and wrote tracts defending it. So I think just Milton's his milieu, his cultural circumstances would have made him, I think, a little
rough around the edges.
A little, right. Like, right. I think he would come out of the cage match with Shakespeare. Although I hate to say it, because I think, I think Shakespeare's a better poet, to be honest. As remarkable as Milton is, Shakespeare's the pinnacle. And I want to say, if you just put their works side by side and say, whose work is better, I would say Shakespeare's is more valuable than Milton's. I always think of Sam Johnson, who said that, Paradise Lost is a book you must read once, but then you never read it again. Whereas Shakespeare's plays, you read them many times, and you always get something different from them. And that's because of Shakespeare's ability to, the way he understands people, and I don't think he's ever been matched in that capacity.
Sure.
So every time you read a Shakespeare play, you're going to notice something different because you've changed since the last time you read that play. But in a cage match, I think Milton wins.
Okay.
Shakespeare's a little too soft.
All right. Well, anyway, Dr. McCarthy, we're running just over 36 minutes. I've taken up enough of your time. Thank you for coming here and doing this and speaking to the students. And thank you to everybody for listening. And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you, George.